before the exobytes hit? Did they give you your powers? That's really all up to you. But what's important is that we've found a way to really unify the player base and integrate them into the DC universe with our backstory. So let's get into anatomy.
Yeah, let's look at the anatomy of a character in DC Universe Online. Obviously, the game is all about you or the hero or villain you choose to make to fight alongside or against the classic and iconic DC characters. Here we start at the beginning of Character Create with a choice of gender and body type. Neither of these choices matter fundamentally to combat, but they matter a lot to you and the personality and the type of character that you want to create. You can see here the different options that we have, all of them along very classic comic book lines, and of course penciled by Jim Lee himself as he set the overall art style for the game. There's two choices you're given right off the bat, either to make a custom hero or villain, or to use the Inspired By system to get an idea of what the game can do and the types of characters you can make. Here, looking at the Inspired By, we take some of the key marquee characters from the license and put them in there and sort of use the system as we have to make approximations. The fiction behind this is the exobytes stole all of the powers of the future heroes and villains, and fragments of them are now available. So while it is not a perfect match, you will be able to inherit many of the characteristics of those characters. So while you can't play as Batman directly in the game, except through our Legends PvP system, you can make a character inspired by Batman who has the look and a lot of the abilities. Remember, the next legend is you, so this is your story. This is about your legend. This is about the trail you blaze as you try to go from zero to hero. So let's take character you've chosen and inspired by Lex Luthor here, Jens.
I'm just going to make custom, so that was happened to be the last one I sort of touched on. So yeah, I can go into the Inspired By if I want to, and I can use it to create a template that I can tweak later. For instance,
right, use it as a starting point.
Exactly. If I wanted to say, hey, I want to start like Batman, my template will be Batman. I'll be male. I'll have a hero. He's serious. He uses gadgets and martial arts, and he's an acrobat. So I can start there, and then if I want to, I can kind of change anything. Maybe I just want to make him a flyer instead of an acrobat because I like flight. So it's a nice, easy way to start off. But
right.
I can also do custom, so let's do that.
And custom will actually break it down to the meat and bones, right? The actual what our characters are composed of. And in DC Universe Online, a lot of the choices you make in Character Create aren't just cosmetic. Of course, we have a great and robust Character Create system for you to dress this character's costume up. But a lot of the choices you make actually have a lot to do with the stories you're going to play, the type of combat you're going to do, and of course how other players see you in the world. So starting off with personality.
Yes, we have our Jersey Shore
That's right, a little situation going on. Hey, your typical powerful.
Primal, serious. These are sort of stances that your character will take as you go through. Let's take serious, because we're going to start in Gotham, which is a pretty serious place.
And so personality actually reflects the basic idol you have in the game, as well as all of the sort of dances and emotes you can do in the game. So there's a suite of animations and emotes that go along with those personalities that reflect that type of personality.
So we also have mentors here. Mentors are pretty much going to be the person that guides you through your new experience and toward the end of the game on your journey to becoming the next legend. Batman is the mentor for tech, Superman for meta characters, and Wonder Woman for magic. If we had chosen villain, we have a couple more different options there that we can use, like Joker for tech, Lex Luthor for meta, and Circe for magic.
And so these 6 mentors we refer to as the Big Six, because while it's simple to say you want to be a hero or a villain, what kind of hero or villain do you want to be? There's quite a spectrum there. So each of these 3 per side sort of represent a different theme within the game. Jens, you want to go through those sort of themes and the high points of how they are reflected?
Sure, absolutely. So basically Batman and Joker are opposites, and we use them for order and chaos. So our storyline themes for them is this sort of drive to create chaos for the Joker and the drive to make order for Batman. If you're in the meta camp and you choose Superman or Lex Luthor, you're going to be dealing with the meta gene stuff, what it takes. So, Lex Luthor desperately wants superpowers, so it's sort of his quest to obtain superpowers. Superman wants to be a mentor for these new heroes and have people actually grow into their powers to defend truth and justice.
And so the words we sort of use in that are selfishness and selflessness,
exactly.
Right? They're opposed, they're at ends of the spectrum, but you get to see 2 different kinds of heroes and villains there. And then of course we have the magic characters.
Yeah, Wonder Woman and Circe. Wonder Woman with her lasso of truth is going to be the ambassador of truth in our game.
That's
and
right.
Circe, who is a sorceress who deceived a lot of people in the Greek stories that she appeared in, is deceit, lies. So we have truth, lies, order, chaos, you know, selflessness and selfishness. So sacrifice and gain, basically.
And those inform the stories and what we call your origin in the game. We originally had referred to this just as that, but we realized the mentor was a stronger suit. That's something that people can understand. Hey, Batman is going to be my mentor through the game, and I'm going to be all about order. Hey, if you choose Superman, I'm going to be about selflessness, and the stories reflect that as you go on your journey, because there's key episodes that are completely dedicated to these mentors that you can only do if you have chosen that mentor.
Now, one thing we spend a lot of time on in Character Create too is making it really visceral and active so that you know what you're kind of getting here. So you can see we do a lot of effects and animations and things as you're making these key choices for your character, so you get a little glimpse or an idea of what you're going to be getting, signing up for.
Well, of course, in a superhero game, you have to have powers, and so the fundamental choice you make for your character is exactly which powers you're going to choose. We started off with 6 powers in the game, each divided into 2 trees. So it's actually 6 with 2 variants each, and those trees are relatively deep and actually have quite a bit of variation. For example, in the mental tree, there is illusions and telekinesis. So one of them is all about messing with people's minds, controlling them, deceiving them, using your mental powers in that sort of very telepathic sort of way. Whereas telekinesis is all about force, picking things up, smashing things, knocking people around. Both of those are under the mental power set, but both play very differently. And each of the 6 power types that we've chosen do the very same thing.
Nature's another cool example of 2 trees that give you really different play styles. We have our plants, which is like where a lot of the healing lives and things like that. You know, creating vines and man-eating plants and things to encase enemies. And it also has shape changing, so it's our Beast Boy angle. You have sort of, you know, turning into gorillas and really cool wolf forms and things like that. Birds. So you got your Beast Boy and your Poison Ivy for that.
So there's dozens of powers per power type. More importantly, your role in the game, in the multiplayer side of the game, is determined by the power type that you choose. We have the sort of 3 fundamental roles you've ever seen in one of these sort of massive multiplayer games. We have tanks, right, guys who defend the party, absorb damage and keep the attention of the enemies.
They're fire and ice.
They're fire and ice are our tanks. If you want to be a healer, in this game you're also going to be punching guys as you heal. You're not going to be standing back looking at bars. So nature and sorcery are healing power types. And then there's controllers. Those are the people who keep the situation locked down and going straight to chaos. And those are gadgets and mental. Now, each of those, like I said, has 2 different distinct play styles in each power type, but they fulfill that role. Everybody, however, has an additional role, which is damage. Everybody does damage. If you want to do damage, you can switch out of your stance, essentially, and go ahead and start punching toe-to-toe. It's really interesting in our game because, as I said, healers are a little bit different. Remember, superheroes, when you go read the comics, there's not a guy who just sits there and bandages people up.
Band-Aid Man.
Yes, that's right. I'll get in there right away and, you know, put some salve on that.
Captain Salve.
That's right. So.
Well, there is a character called Dr. Midnight who basically is a blind doctor, but you know,
yeah,
DC can't do anything normal, so he's got to be blind and has an owl.
But what we try to do is instead get the more heroic side of it. So as a hero or a villain, as you are a healer, you want to get in there and fight because your punching and your attacks actually fuel your ability to heal. So you want to get in there and do the damage, be right in the middle of it. And of course, remember, you can switch as need be. So if there's a particular tough boss, maybe you have to switch back to your role to take it on, or maybe you pour on the damage vial shifting into that mode. So it gives you a lot of tactical choices in a game.
The roles are very fluid as you're going through the content.
Right, so that's 1/3 of your choices for combat, because remember, the combinations are what DCUniverse is all about, you making your own custom hero or villain. So here, let's talk about your movement.
You might think that this is the way you just get around the city. That's true, but it's also how you fight people in combat as well. So your movement mode plays a huge part in it. Speedsters are going to be really kind of traversing the battlefield really quickly. They have special combat maneuvers that allow them to do quick whirlwinds around people or really close on somebody or get away from them really fast. Acrobats you know, are really cool too. They own the space around them. They can cling to the ceiling and the walls and launch attacks from there. They're just very agile and master evaders and use positional combat really well. And then flight is pretty much, well, I want to be here and I'm just hanging up here, and you can do whatever you want. You'll be doing really cool maneuvers where you're swooping down on people and knocking them back. Very aerial, kind of like stunt maneuvers that you use in combat as well.
But remember that your movement modes also give you counters to the other movement modes. So as an acrobat, you can get a grapple line, which lets you snag those pesky flyers out of the sky and bring them down for a fair fight. So these skills are not just like Ian said, they're not just about getting around. It's actually about fighting, and in a few cases, it actually lets you blur the line between roles. giving you a bit of control that you may not have had, a bit of defense you may not have had. So in specific situations, you can counter it, especially in PvP. These things become very valuable because there's an entire stat in the game, a statistic we use, that actually has to do with how easy it is to slow you down, stop you, snare you. So you want to make sure that you actually have a lot of mobility, which is the gear-driven part of this, and that you have the movement mode to back it up. Now your third choice, you have a power type, you have a movement type, and then of course you have your weapon. Unlike a lot of other MMOs, and much like a lot of action games, your weapon actually isn't just how you do damage, it is the entire fighting style. I encourage you today when you're playing, try out a few different weapons and you will see how different the game plays and how it fights. So Jens, you want to talk them through some of these weapons for us?
Yeah, so obviously there's a mix of primary range and primary melee. Every character has range and melee. If you choose bow, which is going to be primarily range, you still have melee combos you can do, which are actually really cool. You know, the guy's taking the bow and he's using it as a melee weapon, pulling arrows out, kicking, punching, but he's also using the bow to fire things. And then we have more melee-centric ones like brawling or martial arts or dual wield, where you're going to be primarily getting up close and personal, but you also have range attacks you can do as well. Each of these fighting styles have different combos that they have access to. They have different game effects. Some are going to lock people down, a little CC. Some are going to juggle folks and knock them back. Some are going to be slower than others. Dual wield is really fast, right? It has long combo chains that are really quick. Whereas two-handed, as you can see here, much slower, but really powerful with lots of knockbacks and things like that. So the difference, there's no auto attack going on in our game, okay? Every button push on the mouse or on the controller is launching a combination that you can branch off in different directions to achieve different effects. So part of your combat package is just right there at the click of a button and how you chain it together. It's not just everything up on a tray.
Right, and unique to DC Universe Online, the combinations are action game combinations. This is not click and your animation changes, right? If you don't do the combinations, you're going to die because a lot of your damage is reliant on you completing those combinations or stringing them together, because your powers also give you combinations. Within the tray, you have the ability to combine powers together. A good example is fire. Fire, there's an entire category or tree of it called ignition, which is setting other people on fire. So the very first ability you have sets dudes on fire. The second power you can get blows up anything that's on fire. Right? So while it might not be useful in by itself, combinatorially, right, combining it with it, you knock a guy up with your staff, have him floating in the air, set him on fire, detonate him, and suddenly you have a combination system not only between the weapons, but also between the power types. Throw in movement there to zip in and spin around and stun him, and you start to see that not only do you get your own custom choices from these sets, but how you load them out can make a completely unique character, even if you made exactly the same choices as another one.
Now you start out the game making this choice of what weapon you want, right? What fighting style. But as you get more points and level up, you're going to be able to choose multiple fighting styles.
That's right.
Where do you want to put your points? So if you start out with bow, that doesn't mean that you can't get dual wield or martial arts later, and then you can switch those up you know, as you're going through the content and have access to different combos. So players will be mastering these things much like they would in an action game or a fighting game on how to unlock the true potential of their character.
And while we haven't talked about it extensively yet, this all ties into our feat system. Our feat system is a lot like a trophy or an achievement system where there's various things you can do in the game, everything from collecting pieces of gear to exploring to defeating bosses under certain conditions. And every time you do a feat, you basically earn some special experience that gives you skill points. So you can actually get and unlock all of the weapons in the game and all of the movement powers within a given class, like all of the acrobatics abilities, because even though you hit max level, there's still more to do because the feats give you more of those goals to go out, more skill points, more options, more weapons to bring to the fray when it comes to that.